Welcome back to the Working Audio Tools podcast, the home of all things mixing and mastering, documenting mine and Paul Third's journey to becoming full-time mix engineers. And occasionally we do an episode where we talk about the tools that we are using on a daily, regular basis. So we thought, okay, it's been a while, let's do a list of 10 plugins that we can't live without and we use in every mix session. It may not be 10, it may be more than 10, but we'll create a list. Number one, working top down, and we both agreed, Masterplan from Music Hack.
100%. Masterplan is one of the best limiters on the market. There's sometimes that it does have a sound, even just at the pass-through. Like for the Mi Piace La Moda mix that we did, I actually didn't use it. I used Flatline because that's really transparent. Like if you want a transparent limiter, Flatline is like really transparent. But Masterplan just does a thing where you can push its loudness and it doesn't ever really feel like it's falling in on itself. It just feels like it gets punchier. Okay, you can hear a little bit of colour in there, but it's just like, it's almost like putting it through a fucking analog limiter a little bit. Like it gives you that kind of grit and it gives you that punch and it doesn't fall back on itself. And the algorithm's just great. I just find that I don't get it doing as much heavy lifting. I'm doing like a limiter sandwich just now. But just for doing the final maybe 2-3 dB, it'll take a limited mix and just still allow you to add that extra 2-3 dB. And I don't really use anything else on it. I used to use the width on it. But yeah, I'm just generally using that loudness algorithm and job done. Loud mixes don't fall in on themselves. Job done.
Yep, I use it for mixing and mastering. The next one for me is obvious for probably everyone, but Pro Q4 has snuck into my workflow, but literally on 2 instances, because if you use the spectral processing, dynamic spectral processing, it will rape your CPU. So I use it if I've not got a de-esser, if I don't need loads of de-essing, I will use it as the first plugin on my vocal chain, and that does de-essing in spectral mode, but also the deplosive. If you use it down at about 100, 150 hertz, it works quite well. It does have a sound if you overuse it, so use with caution, and it does destroy CPU, hence I only use it twice in a mix. Are you using Pro Q3 or 4?
No, on this desktop, I've got Pro Q3, but I moved over to Kirchhoff a long time ago. But see, to be honest with you, I don't even use them. Most of the time, I just use the stock Studio One EQ, but I don't really go into like a lot of like mental EQ moves. It's very broad moves. I'm not really using my eyes that much anymore, which I suppose kind of brings me to like if we think about low end, like all of my low end now kick and bass is all by ear. And I use Emrichelik's Kickshaper and Basshaper. They're every mix. I don't do anything else bar Kickshaper, Basshaper. No, tell a lie. On a kick, I will do some flatline. I'll use flatline as my clipper. If I want a little bit more grit, then sometimes I'll use Emra's got the clipper and Kickshaper. But I don't know, there's something about getting flatline. It's just very transparent. Even as like just a clipper or a limiter, I don't know. I just prefer it. And I like the readout. I don't like how Kickshaper does not. I said this to Emra. I'm anal, so I like to have like a readout for the amount of clipping that I'm doing. He's like, yeah, bro, just use your ears. I'm like, yeah, but sometimes I just like to see. Because again, clipping can be sometimes a little bit subtle unless you really push it. But sometimes it's good to know that you're maybe just getting a half a dB, and you know that is just like shaving off just a little bit. But Kickshaper, Basshaper, just use my ears. I know how all the functions work. And to be honest with you, I've just been getting like 90% of my kick and basses just with those 2 plugins. And we'll do a mix comparison, and Ed will be like, fucking hell, the bass sounds great. What did you do? I'm like, I can't even really tell you what I did because I just used my ears. I'm just like, babe, more bass, more fucking highs, right? More of this, more of that. Well, maybe a bit of compression in there, right? A bit of D-boom, right, D-mud. You know what I mean? I just use my ears and I get it to the way that I want it. And yeah, that's every single mix. I love the way that works. I love Emra's plugins for that he's giving you the tools to be able to just use your ears and you're not so focused on visual feedback. ProQ and Kirchhoff are great if you need to like really hone in on something. Like if you need to find something, you need to duck, or as a specific frequency, or you need to find the fundamental and you want to work around the fundamental in the octaves, then yeah, I will get out Kirchhoff or ProQ or whatever. But even in that, a lot of the times I will just get the Studio One. stock EQ. I'm not as geeky as what I used to be. I used to be super nerdy back in the day, and now I'm just like, fucking hell, an EQ's an EQ. I don't think about it that much, to be honest with you.
Yeah, on most things I just use Pro Tools stock EQ to save CPU load, but sometimes I do use Pro Q3 and, like I said, Pro Q4 twice. I use Kickshaper on kick, toms, and often on the bass instead of bass shaper. Kickshaper does something else that I quite like, especially as you've said, the sustain and the D-boom.
Yeah.
Use with caution. Use with Hyphaman and Under Nanos, where you can really hear the effect of all that. And Vocal Shaper is another plugin that Emra's done. These are WA production plugins. We might have a link in the description. If not, Paul, let's remember to put one in.
Yeah.
Vocal Shaper is, again, it's kind of I say this cautiously, a one-size-fits-all plugin. It's not a one-knob plugin.
Yeah.
But it does a lot of things in one plugin, which some people may like, some people may not like. You have the flexibility, but it does a lot of wonderful things. Vocal Shaper has a leveling feature, which I believe measures the signal against white noise and pulls it in to place. It's almost like an anti-clip gain algorithm, but making sure everything's the same level. And with caution, if you get your vocals in the ballpark, it will level them. It's just that extra little bit of leveling that works. If you're not in the ballpark, it can duck. I nearly said that very wrong. I nearly got dip and duck the wrong way around. Figure out what I was going to say. It nearly ducks things if you're not careful, but if you get it right.
Yeah, I use it, but I use the air function in it. So I always use the air at the very end. That's where I get the top end sheen of my vocals. I'll always use the de-esser because Vocal Shaper is a linear de-esser. It's not a dynamic de-esser. It genuinely isolates the S's, and it's almost like having the S's on a fader, and you just like genuinely bring them up or down.
Very, very good for control. The air mode I use with caution on that because it's got a very distinct sound. I'm more likely to try and get that out of the airband on a Marg or Spectre. Now, next on this list is Sonimus N console that you use. I've never used it.
Yeah, it's funny because the reason that I decided to bring that up again is because my Discord was going, like, they were kind of going all daft for it. They were just like, oh, Paul, like, what is this? Like, Sonimus, you still using it? And then I just spoke about it and I was like, yeah, and I even forget that I've been using it for like 3 years. It's probably the longest serving plugin that I've got. It was the Britson, and then upgraded it to the N console. And I just run everything through it. It's all of my gain staging, and it's one of these tools that, like, I was getting asked lots of questions. How do you use it for that? And then what do you do that and that, and how does that work? And the routing for that. But it just goes on every track. It goes on every bus. All the routing goes to a master bus instance, and it's great because it's got the VU meter for every channel, so I use that for the gain staging. Again, I've got my 2-bus gain staged a very specific way, so when I go into Mixboss, it's always expecting, basically kind of like roughly like the same level going in, and I use the VU meters for that. And the crosstalk algorithm in it just does this thing where a big part of my sound, and I don't really like speaking about it because I'm getting to a point where I'm getting a little bit more greedy. Like, the better I get, the more greedy I'm getting. But yeah, a big part of the openness in my mixes does come from the N console because it's all the crosstalk. And basically what it's doing is it's kind of blending everything in together, and it just kind of adds in this, I don't know what it's really doing deep down, but it just adds a bit of openness to things. And if I want to,
is it basically acting as a summing mixer?
Basically, yeah. It's essentially like working through a console, and it's giving you like the summing crosstalk of a console. But what's good is you can push into it. So if I want a bit of soft clipping, I can just kind of push into it like I would a console. Many people like Dr. Dre would do that a lot in the SSL. He really used to talk about the clipping part of an SSL, where he'd just get the fader and he'd push into it. And he'd get some analog fucking soft clipping. You could do that with the N console as well. I don't really use it that much for saturation and pushing into it. But again, it's just a good gain staging tool. The high pass and low pass filters I use on every mix. I've always said this, that I mix a lot with high pass and low pass, because sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you don't need to be like very pro Q3-ish and be like, you get this and that, and be very, very notchy and very very exact. Sometimes it's just like, that's too bright, let's put a low pass on it. Okay, it's clashing, it's too much low end, like, let's just put a high pass on it. Sometimes that's all you need. So yeah, it's a really simple plugin. It's a tool I use, and yeah, it's just became part of my workflow. And I genuinely, I tried to not mix without it because Britson was going to be unsupported, and I couldn't be bothered getting in touch with Sonimus to give me the end console, but they got in touch with me, and I ended up upgrading it. But when I didn't have it, my mixes didn't sound like me. So it's just become a part of my sound. Couldn't be without it.
There we go. Industry secret. Hey there, Ed here. You may recognise my voice from doing all the other DistroKid advert segments. This time I didn't want to just do a typical advert talking about stuff to do with DistroKid. I actually wanted to give you my feedback about the service because I genuinely do use DistroKid for uploading my music. And I know Paul does, and it turns out Dan Worrell does as well. I've used DistroKid since 2019. As you can see on the screen, I have 6 releases so far. It is genuinely super easy to use. The tracks get into Spotify within 24 hours, which is remarkable. Apple Music takes a little bit longer. I'd suggest giving that 10 to 14 days. The hyperfollow links are really useful for advanced promotion of your tracks, and the promo cards are really great visual aids for social media promotion. Ooh, I particularly like that one. DistroKid collect all the royalties from your streaming services, and here you can find an itemized breakdown of where all your income has come from. There's also a DistroKid referral where you can save your friends $10 per sign-up by creating your own VIP referral link. You mentioned Mixboss, another WA production plugin, which came out recently, and this was the plugin that was one of the contributing factors to you getting the mix with Marv.
Yeah.
Because it was obviously a good mix besides that, but this added some width and depth and balance that was just audibly different from mine.
Yeah. Yeah, Mixboss is something that I thought, was it just one mix? But every mix I've done, like even again the mix that I did today, 4-hour mix, V1 accepted, again through Mixboss. And again, I go into it the way that I used to go into God Particle. So again, I use his multi-band thing, and I mix into that to a certain stage, get it near the end of the mix, and actually in this mix what I did was, because it was a bit of a sparser arrangement, I just got the drums. So I basically mixed the drums and the bass. And then I got Mixboss out, and I was like, right, okay, make sure that's gain stage into that. And then I tried the width, and I tried the depth, and again I used the little looking wet dry thing he's got going on. And then again, just the balance is great. The balance just does it for me. Where normally if I've got the mix sounding the way I want it, what I do is I just take that balance knob and I just move it to a place where I'm like, yeah, that's sounding better. That's sounding better. And then I finish the mixing into that. And yeah, it just does the job, eh? It glues things really well. It's like, it reminds me of Gullfoss, like the gluing that Gullfoss had. And the limiter's great as well. So I'm using the limit. For me, that's why it's better in God Particle, because I don't really like the limiter in God Particle doing any heavy lifting. It's a bit too coloured for me. Where Emra's tried to kind of go head to head with Masterplan for this. So what I'll do is I'll just take his limiter and I'll just bring it up until, and again, I'm using my ears. I'm like, right, that for me is where I'm still getting the punch and it's loud, and yeah, this is, I kind of push it a little bit too far to then to bring it back, and then I'm like, okay, that sounds right. And then normally if I need more, and I'm like, maybe it's like -9, maybe the ref or the rough's like -7, go to Masterplan, and that does, it's a limiter sandwich, and that just does the final, I always find that if you can spread the load, especially with limiting, you'll get better results. You'll find that you get more punch, and it's not having to fucking, cost like bap, 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 bap. It's not like working overly hard.
Yeah, it's like one compressor trying to do everything.
Yeah,
on a drum bus or a mix. It's that's a Jason Joshua thing, isn't it? Of getting lots of instances doing a dB here and there.
Yeah.
All right, stage 1, well documented. You use and abuse it. I use and abuse it now as well.
Yeah, you use it all the time now as well. Yeah.
Mono spread, width, depth, combinations of. It can colour and tonally shift stuff if you're not careful. Worth experimenting with the phase recovery, but genius.
That's genius, because as I've said before, if I need depth, that's what I love about it. I love these plugins where it's all about using my ears. There's not really any visual, there is no visual readouts. It's just, so what I'll do is...
There is, but it's a bit useless.
Yeah, I know, yeah. So what I do is, I'll generally go to stage 1 and I'll just go, right, mono spread. So if I've got something down the middle, and I'm like, I can't, it's out of balance if I pan it to the left or I pan it to the right, it just doesn't sound balanced. Sounds good in the middle. That's where they had it in the mix. They had it in the rough. I just go mono spread, and it just does that, and it just spreads it out and gets out of the way of the vocal, the kick, and the bass and the snare. And yeah, so like it was Emma that taught me about that years ago. And then he showed me a mix he was doing, and he was like, it was like a trumpet or a trombone or something. And he was like, just look how that is, Paul. Would you believe it? That's panned mono. I was like, oh right, okay, cool. But it gets out the way. The depth is just diamond, man. It's just manipulating early reflections, and it just does exactly what it says on the tin. It sits things back and smears it a little bit. But what I also like is it's got like a tilt. So it'd be like a high shelf and a low shelf. And I don't know if it's a tilt. It's one of the two. It's either a low shelf or a high shelf or a tilt. But if I want to add, depth, but also add a bit of top end to something, it's like just so intuitive to use. It's just like really simple stuff. Right, okay, depth, make it a bit brighter, make it a bit darker. And the width, you got to be careful, because if you abuse that, you can end up being like, oh yeah, this is amazing. And then like you go back to it the next day, you're like, oh my God, this is overly way too wide. Like, Jesus Christ. Like it's like genuinely past my arms. But again, that's good. And what I like about Stage 1 is that it's very mono compatible. You got to be careful with the depth. If you do too much, then again, you are adding early reflection, so it is kind of reverb. But if you use all of it tastefully, then honestly, it could just be that little kind of 5% that when a client listens to your mix and their rough or their mix, they're like, interesting. Oh, you've done things differently than me. Because I find that when I get a lot of roughs, one of the things that I don't mean to say amateur, but the reason why maybe we get the gig is because I find, and we used to do this quite a lot, where a lot of mixes, maybe amateur mixes, are all forward. And we used to do that. Our mixes would sound very forward and at you. Whereas, and many people would say, come on, guys, where's the front and back? Come on, fuck, everything's screaming at me from the front. And there's some mixes where that can work, but I just find that, just using it tastefully, and just, it could be a lot of the things where the client goes, this is why I came to you. I don't know how you achieved that, but like you've just sat that back, and all of a sudden my mix has this dimension to it. That's what I like to think I add with a lot of mixes that I make. I mean, it's difficult if a rough's really well mixed and produced, and it's already got a lot of depth. Sometimes I've got to try and fucking recreate it, but a lot of times the reason we get the mix is because, they need our touch, and sometimes Stage 1 could be that touch. And again, all ears. Really simple to use.
And speaking of width and depth, Dynawide, also a WA production plugin. Now, I pretty much just kind of filter through a few presets on this, because there's a lot of parameters in it. It's slightly parameter paralysis for me.
100%.
Once you kind of listen to what you want out of it, and it does something. Emra's presets on that, as we've discussed, violins, brass, backing
congas,
vocals,
fucking mental.
Congas, as you said. The presets just work. They really do. Just stick it on your backing vocal bus, and you're in the ballpark. Yeah,
on the mix I got accepted today, V1, I used it a lot. So I used it. There was these guitars. It was a heavy EDM track, and I made it really, really punchy because I knew that's what I needed. But you had kind of really well played metal guitars, and that's kind of the vibe he wants to go for. He's kind of trying to blend the two. So again, playing a lot of these like Mixolydian shit and stuff like that. I'm like, it's really impressive. But again, I had to make it work. And I think, it was a mix where when I got it, it was all stereo files. I was like, okay, I need to try and make this sit there and that sit there and that work with that and that. And honestly, on the hi-hats, I was just like, the hi-hats were just feeling like they were sitting on top of the mix, and they were wide pan left and right. And I was like, I kind of want them to sit, maybe just like hug the mix a little bit. Like the top end is just got a little bit of width, almost like it's sitting diagonally. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it was like, I felt that if you think about drums, it almost felt like the hi-hats where they had them in the production, almost like the hi-hats were your overheads, and they were right on top of the mix, where I wanted them to kind of be like diagonal. And it just did it. I just went to the preset and I was like, hi-hats. That didn't work. I think it was the second preset. And I went, that's exactly what I'm after. And he's got an auto gain thing in it as well, which is great. And I was like, that's exactly what I wanted. So I did it on the guitars and I did it on the hi-hats. And then I did it was a percussive thing. It was a riser that they had. And I just felt that there were certain elements that were maybe, because when you have something just panned left and right, and if it's like a duplicate left and right, basically you're just making it's essentially mono. Like if something's perfectly left and right, it just goes to the mid channel. So I was like, right, okay, that's what's good about Dynawide, is that I could just make something that's maybe just feel like everything's sitting on top of each other, but it does kind of need to sit a little bit further out, and that's what I did. And I know, and the good thing is I know when I need to use it. There's times when I go, okay, I need a bit of depth, stage one, I need a bit of mono spread. And there's times I'm like, no, I need something that's like what I like about Dynawide is that it's like forceful. That's what I like about it. It's not subtle. It's like if you use these presets and like it's like bang, 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 and you're just like, oh wow, that is sitting right there now. And yeah,
they have intent.
Exactly, that's the right word for it. And yeah, honestly, that's became like a massive, massive one. And I'll tell you another one. Yeah, and by the way, this isn't sponsored by WA Productions. We're just genuinely speaking honestly about
this episode
plugins.
should be.
I know, it's just for you. But that honestly, Detroubler. Oh my God. Detroubler is my demudder, deharsher, and it just does the job. See, like if I think I said it in another episode, if something's muddy now or honky, I just stick Detroubler on it and I go to his knob and I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ, I go to his knob. Fucking hell. Right, I just go to the mix knob thing and I just like, and I'll just like put it 100%. Okay. And I just dial it back until I feel like, and the good thing is they've got characters for them. So it's like boomy, muddy, honky, sizzle, like harsh or whatever it is. And you can select them on and off. And it's just like this dynamic EQ. It's to the Bark scale and it just works perfect. It just genuinely is so intuitive. But if something's muddy, I can just get the mud out. If something's, again, a certain characteristic, I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I put Detroubler on it now and it just does it. Like 8 times out of 10, it does it. And for the other half, it'll be Soothe. I still do use Soothe because there's just something about, especially our good friend MSM. I remember I sent him a message ages ago. I was like, oh my God, I always stick Soothe at the very end of the vocal bus. M's got a vocal preset called Safe Vocal, and that's what I stick at the end of all my vocals, and it just does something, but it just takes the edge just slightly, so I can add a bit of brightness in there, and I can kind of add the edge to it, but it just kind of goes, no, you pop in there, and you just pop in there, and you just pop in there, and it just kind of levels out the top end of the vocal, and it just soothes it, you know what I mean? It's a great, even for this podcast, like I use Soothe on both our voices and they are doing quite a lot because voiceover is very difficult, especially when you're using stuff like dynamic mics and stuff. Like you need a bit of work to make both of these vocals kind of sit aside each other. Because me and Ed have very different vocals. Honestly, Soothe and Detroubler, like I could like deharsh any mix with those two plugins. Any mix. If I've got those two plugins, I can deharsh any mix.
Now, there's one big one for me at the moment that I have to mention, and I'm going to mention it on merit, but it is essential. So, Wes Audio have a plugin for each of their 500 series, which facilitates the digital recallability. You have all your hardware set up, the Titan racks link to your computer, and the data is transferred directly from your computer into the racks and into the modules. How it works is very intuitive and clever, and it's not even intuitive. You don't need to think about it. It just does it. As long as you pull the plugins up into the session. I did have a cock up last week where I had forgotten to put the plugin for the Pandora, which was managing my backing vocal bus, I think, on the backing vocal bus, closed the session, opened it, and I was like, the backing vocals have gone because I hadn't put the plugin in. So as long as you don't forget silly things like that, the recall is amazing. And I do want to shout out Wes Audio because their software's just been flawless. I've not had a problem. I've not had a mistake. The only problems I've had have been not putting the plugins in. But it's brilliant. So they are a very integral plugin for my workflow. And then there's other ones like Spectre, Action Tremolo, and you use M Autopan for the reason I use Action Tremolo, which is for the Autopan feature. Spectre for harmonics, that lives on my MixBus, doing a couple of bits on my bass guitar. And that's the kind of thing where if you're listening to a bass on small speakers like the Tantrum Angry Boxes, shout out to Tom, they're very good speakers for highlighting if you've not got enough mid-range in your bass. And Spectre's a really good way, if you don't want to EQ stuff in. I've found stuff, you highlighted it in a mix a while ago of mine, you said, yeah, there's too much mid-range in your bass, is clashing with the vocals. I was like, he's right there. So I backed off the EQ, but boosted the harmonic content, and it seemed to give the bass presence without clashing.
Yeah.
which was lovely. So Spectre, that just goes in every mix.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think though, without going in, because I don't really like going into my vocal chain too much. And I'm not going to lie, I like the fact that it's so convoluted because it's quite difficult to explain to people, which I like because I don't want people to be
Can I just tell people, not even I know what this is at the moment. I've got an idea.
Yeah, I mean, so by the way, for anybody asking, ceilings of sound, yes. On my vocals, ceilings of sound every time. I use it the way I've always used it on every vocal. Tim Petherick's compressors on every vocal. The stay level, the LE2 and his BA6. Again, I'm doing the parallel thing as well, and that's put to stereo and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, my vocal chain is like, honestly, I could not mix vocals without the way that I do it. I couldn't get the Paul Third sound without following that exact process that I do. Ceilings of sound, I don't really use it. I tried using it on certain other things, but the way that I do it on vocals just works for me. And I just couldn't do it another way. It's just crazy how that chain that I made up just does this thing where when I do vocals, people like Ed and other people turn around to me and be like, yeah, Paul Third vocal, yeah, it's great. What can I say? That's a great thing. That's a great thing to be able to know in nearly like 8 times out of 10, I can get the vocal without even thinking about it. I'm not even joking you. There's some mixes where I hardly listen to the vocal. I just follow the process of what I do. And then at the end, I'll be like, okay, maybe he needs a bit of D-Mod. That's another thing I forgot to mention. D-Mod and Vocal Shaper. That's really good. I always have an instance of Vocal Shaper at the end when I sum the parallels and the main lead together. And again, the D-Mod's just sometimes at the end, I just do it. I just put a bit of D-Mod in there. Listen. There it is there. And sometimes maybe I might need a bit of maybe just a tiny little bit of low end or whatever like that. But yeah, my vocal chain never changes, and I couldn't be without those plugins. They just have the sound. The compressors, maybe not the stay level, because the stay level does a very specific thing, and 9 times out of 10, that's the compressor I use. And Tim's just a master of plugin compression. But yeah, apart from that, it's basically just kind of probably Melda stuff, as Ed said.
DistroKid sponsors the Working Audio Tools podcast, and 30% off your first year subscription can be found in the podcast show notes and the YouTube video description. Hyperfollow is the easiest way to place all of your content in one single place, making finding all of your content super easy for your audience. Upload artwork for your release, edit the information, and apply links to all of the streaming platforms your music is going to be available, which of course on DistroKid is potentially all of them that exist now and even in the future. Add social media buttons so your audience can find you and your latest music video. Creating a beautiful landing page with a preview of your music is easy with Hyperfollow. Hyperfollow links can be created for all of your releases, and it enables you to create pre-save links for your audience to pre-order your music before it's released. This link is shareable on all of your platforms and a great way to promote your next release, only with DistroKid.
Auto stereo balance, I use all the time. If I need to put, mult 2 tracks to like a stereo track, because there's times where you're just like, look, that could there may be 2 performances, maybe 2 guitars. It might be like, like a mic, like maybe they've mic'd that up with there, and like the 2 of them work quite well together if they're kind of the same level. Auto stereo balance, analyze, 5 seconds, and then left and right are perfectly balanced. I always use it on the parallel of my vocal chain. And again, it could just be a thing where, I want to mult 2 things, and yeah, auto stereo balance, job done. M-Auto Align every single mix. M-Auto Align when I'm doing acoustic drums. Honestly, you'd be surprised at the amount of Melda I use. What I love about Melda is that they just are tools that I can use. M-Compare. M-Compare is like, I don't use reference from mastering the mix anymore. I use M-Compare. That's a diamond plugin. It's got this great feature where it just auto-aligns, so you can just go bang, auto-align, and it'll auto-align. So again, there might be sometimes that I'll get like a rough, and maybe there's like the intro's been delayed, or they've done a mix, they've changed something, puts it into place, and the auto leveler is better as well. There's times that I think references auto leveler could be a little bit hit and miss, where the auto can match thing, and M-Compare's great, and I use that.
Yeah, I might need to try that, because I use adapter metric, AB adapter, AB metric adapter, whatever it is. And I suspect there's issues in that.
Okay.
There's just something, I listened to that, and then I can go and listen to like upload tracks to M-Auto, what do I call it, mixup.audio, and then A/B there. Maybe it's just because I have a break and it's fresh ears, but I always hear something different that I'm not hearing in the session. And then I go back to the session and I'm like, that difference is not there. What's going on?
You need to be level matched. That is honestly, it is so,
no, they are.
So,
They
definitely level matched.
Always.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
100%. Even if it's like, even if I've gone from a verse to a chorus, I'm re-level matching meticulously every single time. But there's just something, I don't know what it is.
But then adapter, does adapter have a constant auto gain, or do you have to set it? See, on the Melda M Compare, it's constantly working. So if you have a section that goes up, that comes down with it. If it goes up, that comes up with it. If it goes down, that goes down with it.
So if you have to manually do it. And I don't know how accurate it is in terms of catching specific transients or gauging, dynamic range and LUFS levels. It's got all that metering in it, and it from a comparison point of view, it's great. But I've just caught it a few times, not possibly being as honest with me as I need it to be.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, right, I think what hopefully you'll find with this video, and this is how we'll end it, is that it really is boring plugins. Me and Ed are not that fancy anymore. I know you would love to, us do the YouTube thing and do the old Paul Third thing. It was like, I use this bit of Acoustica and this bit of that and this fancy plugin and this and that. We're just tools, man. Honestly, we're craftsmen. That's what we are now. We just need tools that get us to do a very specific thing. A lot of times I'm not even using plugins. Again, there'll be times I'm like, that's fine, leave it alone. Even like, honestly, there'll be something as simple as like the mix I was doing today. I just felt, right, the snare was just maybe lacking a little bit. And people would go, maybe use this fancy saturator, maybe use this fancy compressor. I just generally went to like Melda fucking M transient, added a bit of attack to it, and that was all it needed. And then again, fucking put a bit of compression on it and then fucking clamped it with a clipper. Just a transient.
Do you know one plugin we've not talked about?
What?
Realphones.
Yeah, I was surprised you were going to mention it because how are you getting on with it?
Well, they've asked me to do a video for them, and I'm like, I literally only use it for the EQ. I don't use any of the studio things. I'm not interested. I need the same environment every single time. So I can do that with an EQ, and I've got for different headphones. I've got different things. I've got the Nanos and the MX4s in Realphones, then the NDH30s. HD490s I've got in a stock Pro Tools plugin, and the 490s go through the DVR Sennheiser crossfeed thing. So I just use it for the EQ. Really.
And to be honest with you, I've got the All S5X sitting there. But see, because I've got such good translation with all these headphones, I don't really need it anymore. I mean, I know Emra's like very fucking rigid in the way he does things, and he will always go to Slate VSX at the end. But, like I've got fucking my eyelet, I've got my MTM Precisions there, Angry Boxers are there, I've got the Calais in the Atmos room and stuff. I don't really need Realphones anymore. But out of habit, I don't know why I still use it for the EQ. I think that because there's certain headphones that I'll get that do need crossfeed, I like to have it there. If I do, I can set a preset and like just have it so it's got that crossfeed in. But I tend to use headphones that don't require crossfeed anymore. Again, the Organics don't, Nanos don't, the as Varna doesn't, MX4s don't. You can get away with it. So yeah, I don't really need it really. But if I didn't have the speakers and I didn't have all the headphones I've got, then yeah, I would definitely be using All S5X with the real world translation checks. But I just don't feel I need it. I just feel I'm at a level now where I don't need to do so many checks now. I'm actually
it's useful from a desktop point of view, listening to reference tracks. That's where it is getting use.
Yeah, I use this. On my Stream Deck, I've got like a button that routes it. So when it opens it, and I've got it set to a certain output, because I can't remember which headphone it is. There's a certain headphone that I use that. That's it. Because if there's headphones that don't standalone on like desktop. For example, I have DSP on the topping D93 discrete. I've got DSP on the FIO K19, but on the Hyphaman EF600, there's no EQ, and that could be great because I've got that set to output through that. So I just press the Realphones button on my Stream Deck, and it loads with the EQ, and it loads with everything, and I can just route it through, and it's Yeah, it's just easy. So yeah, I do use it all the time. It's just that I don't probably use it as it really should be intended, how everybody wants me to use it. But yeah, you just got to use what you use. And yeah, I think what's great with us, Ed, is that we just don't get distracted anymore. And we are boring. We are fucking, we are super
The
boring.
royal we.
We are super boring. But I love that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what plugins we use in our mixes. All that matters is how they sound and how they translate. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So yeah, I'm sorry to let you all down that there isn't any really fancy plugins and stuff. And yeah, I'm boring now. I'm not the old Paul Third that I used to be. I just, yeah, that's what it is. Craftsmen, Ed, that's what we are. We're audio craftsmen.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not the gear, it is the ear.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's how we should leave it, Ed. It's not the gear, it's the ear. If you have found any new plugins that you would like to distract other people with, because we won't get distracted, I can promise you, we don't get distracted anymore, me especially. But yeah, leave your comments down below if there's any plugins that you've been using recently that have been doing a great job for you. Share your experiences. Thanks again for DistroKid for sponsoring this episode and making all of these episodes possible and keeping this podcast going. My name's Paul Third. That's Ed Thorne. It has been emotional, as always. And we'll see you again.
You keep stealing my line.
I know, I love it now. I love it. I love stealing your line. I just
Hello, everyone. Goodbye.
You're shite with a Scottish accent, though, yeah. Fucking shite Scottish accent. Shite patter. Shite banner.
I'm off.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye. Nice jeans. Hey.
Look at this ensemble. Whoa.
Whoa. What fucking delinquents. Right, let's end this.